Yeah, I think it's about that time, so I'm going to get started. Hi, I'm Tommy. My day job is that I'm actually a data scientist here at Microsoft, where I work on really big experiments, so A/B tests on our online products, with millions and millions of users in each side, and it's a lot of fun. But that's not at all what I'm here to talk about. I'm actually here to talk about teaching data science to people with a program that I do through the University of Washington. So it's actually a joint talk with this guy, Mako Hill, who is not here, unfortunately. We were double booked this weekend, so he's at something else. And I actually want to start with the punchline. So this graph was made by someone who had 20 hours of programming experience. What she did is she went and grabbed data from the internet. She processed it she grabbed it with an API in Python. She processed it to clean it up, to remove some noise, some stuff like that, and she made this plot. And what this is, as you can see, is edits per day for all articles in the Wikipedia category, people shot dead by law enforcement officers. Does anybody want to guess what the spikes are? Like, does this? No. So the big spike over there on the far side, that's like November of 2014-ish, I believe it was. Anybody want to know what that is? So that was Ferguson, right? And some of the others we checked. They are all sort of related to controversial events where someone was shot by the police. The sort of the next big spike to the left was someone who was actually shot dead on BART back in 2009. And all of these spikes are sort of controversial events. And the magical thing here is this is actually part of her research. She's doing social science research, and she just needs access to what events moved the needle over the last 10 years. And it turns out, and this is sort of the thing that sort of people like us are like, I didn't know this was a problem. But if you just ask somebody who sort of is interested in a problem, how do you go and get that kind of data? They don't often know. It's hard to get this stuff, even though it's just there if you ask. And so that problem is why we started the Community Data Science Workshops, which is a series of workshops that we teach at the University of Washington aimed at beginners. And our goal is to get them from very beginner state to competent and capable of answering the questions that they already have in their day-to-day lives. And so the big reason we do this is imagine a world, and in fact, this world existed for quite some time, where only some people control the access to information. Only some people can read, only some people can write, and they're sort of cloistered off somewhere. And then the most people just don't have access to reading and writing, to the things that sort of define the modern world in a very real sense. Back then, having access to reading and writing, being able to do those things, having books, it was sort of automatically elevated you, right? In ways that are sort of profound. It often lifted you from a very short, kind of miserable life, right? Of tilling the land for someone who was who took all your stuff, to this elevated status, and just by knowing how to read and write. And if you think about it, back then, how did they do this? Well, there weren't very many books, and more importantly, I think, the books that existed were in Latin. Right? If you were in what is now France and you sort of spoke the vernacular, whatever it was, you couldn't, even if you had a book, it wasn't going to be any good for you because it wasn't even a language that you may even know. It turns out that's still true for people, except for now, instead of reading and writing in a language, the sort of the thing that is required, increasingly required to be successful in a modern world, to sort of have access to and understand your world, is data. And on top of data is computers. And access to that power, in a very real sense, determines, or at least partially determines, sort of how you go about your life. And it's not just the economic ramifications of this. There's little booklets out there that will tell you that data scientists make more money than average and sort of have more job security than average. And those are very real things. But there's also a social justice component to this. Having access to the means of producing and consuming data is incredibly important just to change the world, right? To understand and interact with what's around you. But we've sort of placed these barriers in front of someone getting started on that path. One of the big ones is, where do you find the data? Right? We produce tons and tons of data on Wikipedia, on Twitter, all these things, and we need to sort of teach people to get that data. The other is, and this is getting better in a sort of weird way, is the arcane languages. They're still there. It used to be Latin. For a while, it was something hard like C. We've got things like Python, but Python is still surprisingly sort of dense. We're in this state now where we've got so many buzzwords, right? Like, if you come to this thing, I mean, you may think we're at a zoo. We're talking about like snakes and pandas and stuff. And it turns out that sort of barrier is very real for people. Just understanding what words should I search on the internet to solve my problem with a computer is where we're meeting people to get started. So our goal is to teach non-programmers to ask and answer questions using Python and data that they can get on the web. What I mean by non-programmers, unlike most boot camps, we have no interest in making professional programmers. Being a professional programmer is awesome. I truly enjoy it, but that's not our goal. In the same way that not everyone needs to be a professional journalist, we do need those, but everyone needs to be able to read and write. Right? So we're aiming at that sort of basic data literacy. And so some of the questions that we're enabling people to ask and answer. Are new contributors to an article in Wikipedia sticking around longer or contributing more than people who joined last year? So think about what is required to answer a question like that. Right? You need to know. It's easy to look at Wikipedia, right, and get one article right now. How do you get the historical data of what have people edited in the past for that article? How do you get the data on what does a single user do? And then you can also dive into Twitter data. Same thing. It's easy to read 40 tweets on twitter.com. It's a little harder to read 4 million tweets, right? But that's sort of where the power comes from. So how do we do this? Our philosophy is to, first of all, we explicitly select for absolute beginners, unlike many of these boot camps. And when I say select, we are almost always overbooked. So we'll usually get like 120 applicants and accept maybe 90. And I'll talk about that in a second. That turns out our rate limiting step is people like you, as mentors. And then the other thing is that we're not making programmers, we're making problem solvers. We're prioritizing getting the answer correctly and quickly over anything elegant or efficient. The code that I write at work and the code that I teach them to write, it turns out it is different, and that's okay. Teaching someone to read and write, you don't start by saying you need to have something that you can publish. Right? We don't teach that first. We don't teach like setting up a bibliography. We teach getting your point across. In programming, getting your point across is getting the right answer in a way that you understand. And so that's sort of teaching a subset of Python. The other thing we're doing, we have limited time, it's 3 days, is get people as close to independence as we can. So what that really means is a few things. Number one, teaching them documentation and openness, reproducibility. So in other words, later, you're going to need to remember sort of what we taught you, and also you're going to want to sort of show all of the steps in whatever it is that you've discovered about the world so that people can check. We've got this philosophy that if something is documented, open, reproducible, and wrong, that might actually be better than getting the right answer in a way that you don't understand and that you can't share with others. Because if it's documented and open and wrong, somebody can at least correct you. Right? This is sort of, it's sort of the same thing behind like open source software. The other thing that we do is we're sort of emphatic that you should be able to use the tools you already have. Right? So we're teaching you, one of the best things we can do for you is to get Python running on your computer. We actually use Anaconda for that. Get it running on your computer as your computer is now, whether we don't care about what OS you're running, anything like that, so that you have the tools where you already use tools, right? Already on your computer. And we also try to interface with the tools you know. Almost always that means Excel. So we're completely fine. We're not a purist of like you should use matplotlib. No, we want you to solve problems. Solving problems is often use Python for getting data from the web, use Python for cleaning that data, use Excel for visualization. That's fine. So some other principles we have is that students from the very beginning, 3 hours into learning what Python is, are writing real programs on their computer to solve actually real questions. So within 3 hours, we give them a list of all names of babies that were born in the United States. And there's, I don't know, some number of thousands of names, which is actually a really cool data set, right? And so you can ask questions about like, well, what are the popular names? What changes, right? What names change over time? You can answer that immediately with Python. The other thing that we really focus on is 5-to-1 learner to mentor ratio. Again, that's where you all come in. We can accept more people. In fact, for every 1 extra mentor we have, we can accept 5 more people. Right? We desperately need more mentors. We already have maybe 10 show up, 15 show up, and we need quite a few more. And what are you doing as a mentor? You're answering, remember back when you learned to program and you got those like arcane error messages, right? Like it prints a stack trace, you don't even know what that is, but it prints a bunch of stuff. And what really happened is you forgot to close a quote. Yeah, you're helping people across that hump. And that hump is a lot bigger than you think it is now, right? I mean, how many of you are like professional programmers, right? A lot of you, right? And so you're like, you probably don't remember starting out, right? But that's where we're helping people. The other important point is we actually look for mentors that just learn how to program. So if that's you or if that's someone you know, that's who we want because they know what it feels like to sort of struggle with your first program. And that's sort of an important thing that we often forget as professionals. So we actually teach 4 sessions. The most important one is the first one. We come in on a Friday night and we have people set up Anaconda Python on their computer. And the reason we do that is it sort of just works. They have Python running. We actually run them through a few small exercises in Python so that they know the very basics, what a variable is, things like that. We get a text editor set up. We get everything set up. And the reason that's important is you now have the tools. The tools can be very opaque. If someone says, just go download Python, like, where do you even start with that, right? Now that you have the tools, we've enabled you to sort of take your own destiny in your hands. We also, this year, we switched to Python 3. We had been 2. Python 3 solved like all of our nasty issues. We'd had issues with, if you've ever just installed Python on somebody else's computer, it turns out there's lots of things that can go wrong. The biggest one for us was usually Unicode, which is, as we all know, sort of a disaster. And so Python 3 actually mostly fixed this. In fact, I believe last time we had one person who still had a Unicode error, and it was because they had somehow installed Python 2 after Python 3, and their path was messed up. So like Python 3 fixed it. But yeah, Python 3, Anaconda. The next session, we start introducing programming. So within one day, we go from, I know what Python is because of yesterday, to writing loops, using lists, using dictionaries, using variables, and solving simple problems. Problems like, what's the most popular name of boys last year in America? What's the most popular name that is used for both males and females? Simple questions, but it's a pretty good starting place. So then week 2, we usually have a break. Week 2, we introduce getting data from the web. What I love about that is that it seems like this magic thing to just download a ton of data from the internet. It turns out it's really easy, right? We teach Python requests. If you've ever used Python requests, it's sort of the simple way of downloading something from the internet. We then, in the afternoon, we teach how to get data from Twitter and how to get data from Wikipedia. We've also introduced the data.seattle.gov data sets. If you've ever seen these, they're pretty amazing. So Seattle produces tons of data about the city. Stuff like, where are all of the bike locks? Where can you lock up a bike? Data sets that people actually want, right? It can actually use to answer real questions. We introduce how do you get that data from the internet? And we do it the way you guys learn how, trial and error. Right? You tried some things, and you got error messages, and you looked them up online, and you fixed them, and you sort of iterated until you got it right. That's exactly what we teach them to do. And then we close with a third session that is sort of analysis and visualization of sort of how do you build a plot like that one I showed you at the beginning? How do you see your data? So throughout that, mornings we're doing interactive lectures. In the afternoons we're doing all projects, either baby names or get data from Wikipedia and Twitter, or visualize something. Throughout that, we're focusing on some of the sort of the data science fundamentals. Thinking about things like sampling, like what are the blind spots in your data, right? With Twitter, this is particularly important, right? If anybody's ever used the Twitter data, you're sampling from a stream of sort of unknown quality at an unknown sampling rate, with sort of all these things that they're not going to tell you about their data that sort of can complicate your analysis, right? Oh, you're probably sampling in English, for instance. We sort of cover those gotchas, right? We cover sort of how do you think about a result that you might read. And I think ideally coming out of that is people sort of have that sort of, they're a bit incredulous, right? They don't believe things that they read as much anymore because it's so easy to get things wrong, right? We teach stuff like, see that correlation? Yeah, that's not real. And that's sort of that's part of literacy now, right? We're inundated with these facts supposed facts, right? That flow to us through various things that we click on the internet. And learning how to filter that and understand how would one actually answer a question like these people claim they're answering is incredibly important to sort of survive in the modern world. As important as what we teach are the words that we never say. So you will never hear us say class, objects, method, recursion, list comprehension, especially list comprehension. We don't cover testing. We don't cover IPython notebook. We sort of cover NumPy only for plotting and only if you want it, right? So people sort of self-select into the I would like to learn more of this versus not. Why do we not teach this stuff? It seems kind of fundamental, right? The reason is that it is fundamental at some point. But answering simple questions, getting started, this is not where you start, right? This is sort of teaching someone to read by starting with the bibliography. You don't do that. You start with communicate, solve the problem you have. And so that's what we do. This, by the way, is Amelia. She's a mentor. She knows what all those words mean. So she does, but she's not teaching them. She's teaching people to solve the problem they have. So one sign of success is that we're actually growing. All these other pictures, I should say, that are all of super high quality. Oh, by the way, that's Mako. That's the other guy that's not here. All these super high quality pictures are from a friend of ours. This picture is from Waterloo. We've actually expanded. So we've got 3 of these run now in Seattle. It's close to 300 people that have come through. And Waterloo ran one of these. Waterloo's in Canada. You can tell because it's kind of sadder looking. And then there's also 2 being planned in Chicago and DC. So we're expanding. All of our material is online, wiki.communitydata.cc. If you want to run one of these yourself, go for it. All the data is there, all the data is there, and also all of the material we teach is there. And you all know more than you would need to know to teach this. And more importantly, if you want to do this in Seattle, we'll probably teach again in the fall. We usually try to, so probably half the people are grad students at the UW, because we teach at the UW. And quite honestly, it's a sampling problem, right? We advertise to the lists that we know about, which all happen to be at the UW. So if you want to help us publicize, we'd love to have that. But we really do need mentors to help us reach more people. And you can sign up at mako.cc/ that's a 0. So mako.cc/0m, it should redirect you to some mailman mailing list. I can't emphasize this enough. We need people that are willing to dedicate 3 weekends to help people. And for every person that we get as a mentor, we have 5 new people that we could not teach before that we can teach now. So we would love to have all of you. And you can find me if you have questions down there. That's Did the link die?
I think it's .commerce.
Oh, it's definitely .cc. I'll fix it in a second here. Sorry about that. Go to the top link. That one definitely works. I checked it. I checked that one and was like, oh, they both work. And that was a bad idea. It worked for you? I think you might have typed it wrong. Oh, does it work?
You have to go to community data science workshops /.
I'll fix that. My bad. You can tweet at me and remind me. Anyway, that's all I've got. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah, we have a success story right here.
I was in this, and I knew very little about programming. And I went to the Spire talk earlier today that was passed away, and I actually could kind of follow along for the first time. It was extremely rewarding and super fun. Because usually you think like, I have to take a year, go to school and learn coding, and it's impossible. But in 3 sessions, I was like, I can write a loop. That's great. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. I think the best sign we have for that is that so we've taught 3 of these. In the latest one, we had 2 or 3 people come back as mentors. So that's like our best sign of success, right? Is we hope to eventually retire from teaching and let the people that we've taught teach other people. So yeah, I think that's the goal. We're not under the illusion that we're going to get everyone to that point, right? All we can really do is in a sense, give you the tools and teach you which words to put into the internet, right? And the people that are dedicated and that really need it, they do quite well.
I really liked your slide on like words we don't use. But like I find like that's really hard for me. Do you have like any sort of like advice on like alternative words to use?
It's so hard.
And I don't know how to.
It is, okay, so that is the hardest part. I think the advice is you just have to be careful. Sort of think through it. Practice helps a lot. You probably have a friend who is not a programmer, at least one, right? Try it with them is the answer. So this is, it really is the hardest part is, and the way it happens is you're just like programming along in front of them and you do something that you're like, oh no, I just opened up a can of worms. Like you accidentally do a list comprehension. It sounds silly to say like you accidentally do that, but you totally will. You'll accidentally do something, you're like, oh crap. But yeah, that's.
I'm like trying to explain, like it feels like it's necessary for them to understand that this is an object, but it's like not necessary all the time.
It's not.
And then like also like I'll introduce something of like, oh yeah, there's this like package, it's called request, it does some magic. But like I feel like I'm like throwing stuff where they're just like, whoa, it's magic.
Yes, and people get overwhelmed. Did you want to?
Yeah, you're fine.
Is that what my phone is? Sorry.
If you go and search Google for community data science workshops, like the second or third link.
All right, perfect. Oh, good. Yeah, okay. Huh. I need to correct that. Not bad. I checked the first one. Anyway, so to answer your question, I think the thing that has worked for me is, so first of all, we're all on some gradation of this is magic. I don't know where you are on that, but I know that mine is somewhere between like the OS and like the language in the OS. Somewhere in there, it does sort of start becoming magic. And part of programming is dealing with abstractions that you don't understand, but you know the input and the output, right? And so we are, in some sense, forcing them into the deep end, but basically saying, yes, this library is magic. And the reason we're introducing it is because you need a little magic right now, and that's how programming works. Python, for instance, is basically just magic C. And so, it's hard. And I think the hardest part for me when I'm doing it is watching like the look of sort of panic that comes over sometimes. And the only thing you can do is slow down a little bit, help them through, explain that, there are some things that I don't really understand either. For instance, how requests work. Like it does things that I guarantee you it would surprise me. So yeah, you just have to sort of remember your audience, I think. The people that typically almost the better you are at Python, and certainly the more you use Python in your day-to-day work, it's almost inversely correlated with being good at teaching at this level. And so that's hard. It's very hard. But it's also, it does teach you to think about the language in a new way.
So you compared this problem to reading literacy a couple times. Do you know of any measurement or metric for how we are doing on this problem as a society or compared to others?
That's a good question. So how are we as a society doing at teaching people this sort of new literacy? I don't know of a good metric. I almost wonder if like time in front of a screen is almost correlated with it. And the only reason I say, well, I don't know. There's something about like, people like your grandmother that sort of came to computers late in life still thinks of them as more magic than you do, even if you were a layperson, right? But in general, no, I don't know that we have a good metric yet. I don't know, and I think it might be on us. We have managed to make a set of tools that is very good for power users. And there's tons of people out there working on sort of data tools for not power users. But the space is not as well developed maybe as you come here and the things that everybody wants to talk about are Spark and things that are 3 levels up from where people start. Good. So we'll end early because it's 6 o'clock on Saturday. All right.